Hi, I'm Jennifer Quick with Soul Clarity Coaching, and this video is for the ladies. Yes, you. Now, men, you're welcome to listen, but in this video, it's not about you. You're welcome to sit, listen, and learn. But ladies, I'm talking to you. Our society is not designed to support women, and there's a lot of misconceptions about women out there. Women are these amazing creatures. And there is in the newer era, a lot of celebration over the womb space, the ability to create children, and how peaceful and loving and nurturing and all these wonderful traits of women. And that's great. Those aren't the women I'm really talking to. Who I want to talk to today are the women in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, and older. Women get a lot better with age. This amazing thing happens to women as they age. They start stepping into their real power, their real value. So a lot of the times women in our whole society is structured to say that the value of women is in regards to having children, raising children, supporting the men in their lives, holding families together, social community. And we are. Absolutely. We are naturally gifted that way. We are the fabric that holds it all together. That is the feminine energy, and that's exactly what it does. And women embody feminine energy. We tend to express it more openly than men do. Men have feminine energy, but operates a little differently than it does for women. Now, our society tells us that as we get older, they tell us that our beauty fades. Bullshit. They tell us that our use in society diminishes. They question our sanity. When in our entire lifespan, they tell us we're just hormonal, we're overly emotional and too hormonal. Okay. Here's a first notification for all you guys that might be listening, and to any woman who denies this about themselves. You might be hormonal, but you're probably just pissed off. Okay? Hormones, yes, they can produce a little extravagance of they more affect our tolerance level, our ability to cope with bullshit. The nicety hormones tend to fade a here and there during the month and also during lifetimes. It does not mean that we are overly emotional. Means we're sick and tired of putting our face on to make life a little more safer and more nurturing and comfortable for you, for someone else. Okay? So what happens to women as they get older, they hit into about their 40s. Well, about in their 30s, the biological clock starts to tick. And we start questioning whether, if we haven't had children, whether we should be having children and whether we want to have more children, that type of thing. By the time we hit 40, we've pretty much made that decision. And either we are pursuing, if we haven't had children yet, we might be pursuing how we're going to have children. Or we may have decided we're not going to have children, or maybe our children are growing up, okay? Or whatever. That's biological clock ticking. That's her choices in life, and that's not what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about is when a woman hits her 40s, it's like this. Talk about the midlife crisis that men often go through. Women don't really go through a midlife crisis. We kind of go through this thing of being done. We're done with having society tell us how to behave. We're done with compromising ourselves for others. We're done with sugarcoating it. We are done with the sacrifices, the playing small, the withholding, the hiding, the preservation. See, as we get into our 40s, society starts to say that our worth isn't there anymore. And with that casting off of us, where society's not pushing on this breeding program to us, and our values being around our looks and our ability to create, when that pressure starts coming off of us, we start to feel free. Usually by the time a woman's in her 40s, she has some sort of financial stability of her own. And she no longer has this ingrained tolerance for, rude, selfish, self-centered behavior that has often been in her life. We kind of cast all that stuff off. We cast off expectations. We cast off other people's opinions. And we stop living to some ideology that isn't us. And we kind of take a step back and we go, who are we? Because somewhere along the line, we never stepped into the power of who we are. Men kind of do that in their 20s because they got to go and find out how they're going to be a provider. That's the biological drive with them. Women don't usually do that. But in their 40s, when that whole children thing starts to go away from us, the pressures of it, the demands of it, and we start getting a little bit of freedom, we cast all that off. We go and we find ourselves and we find our authentic self. And we start questioning everything we've done, everything we are. And we start discovering that we're unique. We're very different. Each one of us is extremely different. We have very different things to offer the world. We have a different opinion. We have a different value. We have wisdom. The way a woman's life unfolds, she is in the trenches of the deep and the rich of life from the very beginning. Our childhood is usually taken away from us much younger, whether that be through violence or abuse of some kind, but it can also simply just be in our own biological cycle. It hits, once you get into as to having your period, it puts a different pressure on you. You now have to deal with adult issues. You're no longer carefree like you were with a kid. So as a kid, society starts to put expectations on you, and right from the time you go into school, people start telling you how a lady or a girl is supposed to be. And they start setting these expectations. Whereas with boys, it has a tendency to be a lot more wild. We often find ourselves as children watching the boys going, I wish I could be that free. Because our freedom gets taken away from us at a fairly young age because of the structure of our society. We also we give up our freedom in a lot of ways. We give up and we conform to society because our society is designed to function on the 24-hour male cycle. The male hormonal cycle is a 24-hour cycle, and that is what our world is designed to function on. Women don't function on that. Women function on a 4-week hormonal cycle. And that means during a 4-week period of time, we have days where we're really outgoing, really social, really nurturing, really loving. We have multiple days in a row where we're cave dwellers. Like, get out of my face, leave me alone, it's my time, okay? We have times when we are incredibly creative and we just want to pour our hearts into the world or into a project or something like that. And it's not in a 24-hour period, it goes over a course of 4 days. And so we have this rhythm that goes up and down. And one of the things that COVID, that whole shutdown we went through and everybody got sent home from work, one of the things that happened is that women started to discover and really tune into the fact that they operated on a different cycle than what our society has been set up to operate on. We operate on a 4-week cycle, not a 24-hour cycle. So a lot of women didn't want to go back to the corporate world. They didn't want to go back to the society demands. They wanted to stay and try and figure out how to ride and take advantage, and not take advantage, but ride their life in harmony with this 4-week hormonal cycle that is more tuned to them. Okay? Now, even without having had COVID put us into the drastic shift of life that we did, even before that, women hit their 40s and felt this pull towards moving away from society and into more natural harmony with themselves. Okay? And that's what happens in your 40s. Now, I like to say it's your fabulous 40s, because when you hit 40, you start figuring out you really are fabulous, just exactly how you are. Women in their 40s are freaking amazing. They really are. They're waking up, they're exploring things, they're trying new things, they're getting out there, they're vibrant, they're crawling back into who they are. They're in a self-discovery phase. They change their lives, they go after things. They're really quite amazing. They're very curious. Now, as they move through their 40s and they get into their 50s, they become quite nifty. Such an old word, right? But nifty 50s, that really is about women. Because what happens, nifty, actually I wrote down the meaning of nifty. I wanted to say this. Nifty definition is particularly good, skillful, or effective. That is the first definition of it. The second definition is fashionable and stylish. So what happens in our 40s is we also start playing around again with fashion and how we present ourselves and which way we're no longer following the hair trends or the fashion trends. We're moving into, does it look good on me? Do I like it this way? Does my hair want to go this way today? Do I want to wear that today? What do I think looks good? We no longer really care as much about what the trends are, right? We're still aware of them because we're involved in society. We know what's happening, but we're not really driven to wear them. We start moving towards, what am I comfortable in? What makes me feel good about me, right? What makes me feel fabulous? And as we get into our 50s, we kind of get a whole new style going on that is us. It's much more authentically aligned to us. So fashionable and stylish in their 50s, nifty, right? Nifty 50s. And now, again, this particularly good, skillful, or effective. So what happens is, and I work with a lot of women, 40s, 50s, and 60s. That's probably the majority of my business and has been since I started this, is women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And it's because so many of them, particularly in the 40s, they go in, they get a calling from their soul to step into their soul power because they haven't been living by it. They've been living to conform to society. And in their 40s, they start saying, I'm not going to conform anymore. So who am I? And they really start finding their own identity. By the time they get into their 50s, they often have started whole new careers, gone in completely different directions. Some have moved into the city, some have gone extremely out of the city, some and going into the gardening and the farming, and others have gone into corporate and arts and culture and right into the heart of society. They have gotten involved in their communities and giving back to their communities. Like they find their groove, they find their gifts, they step into their power, and they start serving back to the world. They start bringing their wisdom from their experience and letting it out into the world. This is the gold mine of humanity, is the woman when she steps into her power. Because when a woman is in her power, and a man is in his masculine power, and they come together, there's this incredible energy of creation about them. And that's what women in their 50s are really looking for as they get older. That's what, well, not everybody hits it in their 50s. This is very generalized. Some women come across this much younger. Some are much older than they're stepping through this process. But generally, it hits when a woman hits into her 40s, she gets this emotional questioning who they are and wanting to step into more authenticity of who they are, connected to their soul, their inner, their wisdom, bringing out that Crone. What a terrible name, right? Do you ever notice how awful our society speaks of older women? We are crones, elders. What's the other one? There's another one. Geriatric. Did you know you're listed as geriatric after the age of 35? Like, it's just, another one I looked up is the, how did I word it? I think I don't have the note on it, but I worded it, I think it was what is the leader of a matriarch? Leader of a matriarch is what I think I punched in. And it told me that a patriarch is the leader of a matriarch. And it listed matriarch as a hypothetical society. Did you know that there's actually tribes all over the world? There are still tribes in this world that are actually matriarch based. That means women led. That women are making the big decisions for the community. Okay? They are still in the world. They are historically how humanity was. Okay? It's only this era that we have been under such dark shadow of it led to the rise of the patriarch, but I don't want to say that it's the patriarch that caused the suppression of the matriarch, because that's not exactly fair. Men did not cause necessarily the suppression. It was a corruption of power. It was a corruption of the message. And that is not a man thing. So please separate that out. If you are associating patriarch, power, and corruption with men, please separate that. Because that is not men. Men have been victimized by this entire power play that has been going on for thousands of years now. They have been victimized from it just as much as women, but in a completely different way. They're polarized. They're opposites. Okay? For every suppression, they've been exploited. All right? And what we need to do is bring the two back in balance. It starts within the self, and then within the relationships, and then within the community. And that's the process we're going through right now. And women in their 50s, I'll go back to that, they have an incredible insight to that, because they really do start to move into that balance. My generation, I'm 50, and having grown up in the 70s and the 80s, and then starting my career through the 90s, and then getting married in the late 90s and having kids in the 2000s and raising kids. Through that era, growing up, I saw my mom. So my mom started out being home with us when we were little. And then when we went to school, she went into a career. And she had a really good career. And she had years where she earned more than my dad, which was never, thankfully, an issue between the two of them. They were just happy to be making money. But there was an issue in adjustment to the family of her going back to work. I was pretty young, but I saw a lot of the controversy that happened. And it wasn't that somebody was against her doing it. It was that she had to rise against what was expected. And it wasn't that my dad didn't support her in doing it. It's just he never thought about what it meant in his world and how he had to now step up. And there were times that he had to make dinner. And honestly, he had never even comprehended doing such a thing in his life. Right? A lot of men of his era didn't. Right? He was born in the 40s. Like, he had no comprehension of a man making dinner. It wasn't in his world. He was tradesperson, right? So anyhow, so that caused a lot of conflict in their marriage, as well as their parents. So my grandparents, they were supportive, but at the same time, they expected her to still fulfill that mother role and everything. And so I watched my mother and her friends and her generation hold it all and do it all and carry it all. And it was, and they passed on this message that we could do it all, we could have it all. But it wore them out. It was exhausting and it was crazy. And one of the things that happened is they really had to step into their masculine side. And you had to be a man to survive in a man's world, to prove yourself in a man's world. It was all about proving yourself, proving you were capable of it, proving you were able to do it, proving you were just as good. Right? Thankfully, we don't really have that anymore. We don't, but we still have the programming. So I still have that programming. So when I got into my career in the 90s, I was very much in my masculine energy, very much driving forward with being strong, being independent, being driven, right? And that's how I went. I went into I did some of the corporate in Vancouver, like the big city corporate kind of stuff. I did all that. I pursued the career. And then when I met my husband, I was at that. And when we started talking about marriage, I was like, I want to be the mom. I want to stay home with my kids. I want that. I want my kids to have a parent there. We both wanted that. And we both wanted to be there to raise our kids. And I said, well, if there's going to be one of us home, if we can only afford to have one of us home raising those kids, it's going to be me. Because I'm not going through the whole pregnancy and birth process and not having the joy of raising those people, right? And so that was the way we agreed. So that was great. But when that time came in my life and I had babies and all of a sudden I was home, I was very much into my feminine side and it completely was foreign and confusing and unfamiliar. And I was so out of my depth. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, before that, I knew how to hold down a job. I knew to pursue a career. I knew how to balance my budget. I knew how to save for the future. I knew how to pay for things. I knew that world. I did not know this world of how to kiss boo-boos and change diapers and deal with social problems and stuff like that. That was so foreign to me. And I was so in over my head and it was so all-consuming. And actually, my husband was actually a lot more nurturing than I was. And he was in the exact opposite. He got thrown into this role as provider. And so the stress levels that it put on him as provider, because he wasn't used to being providing and responsible, not only for himself, but for another, not just one other human, me, because I was now reliant on him, because I was taking care of these children, but he was now reliant for 3 people's lives. And that was a lot of pressure on him. And of course, like every good human, we didn't handle it very well. Thankfully, we did find our way back to each other. And that's a whole nother long story that I didn't want to go into because I really wanted to focus on women in their 40s and 50s. And so what I'll go back to is that my story of having raised and watched my mom doing it all and watched how the family supported and her on one side, but also conflicted with her on the other side, not out of anger, but out of I just never dawned on them that she wasn't going to do all these things. It's not a judgment thing. It's just the fact of life. That story, that's not alone. That was her entire generation went through that. All her friends were going through that. And it's the same as me. We grew up under that. And the women of my generation, we went through that. We saw our mothers doing that and we stepped into that power and we made our careers and we stepped into the masculine energy as we were supposed to. And then we decided to have children. We stepped back to have children and we try and balance this being overly there was a lot of back in the late 90s and the early 2000s there and right through the 20 up until the 20 teens really, and it's still kind of going on now. It's shifting a bit now, but it was so over consuming into your children's lives. Birthday parties were these elaborate events that you rented out halls and had performers, and it was just so overkill. We were overly doing it, right? That's a very common story of my generation and of women hitting their 50s now. We fought this balance and we did that balance, and our husbands didn't understand it either. They were reacting as well in that how this was going to play out, holding down careers, raising children, and all of how that dynamics, running a business. I've actually been in business for myself. Well, I've had multiple businesses and for quite a long time and everything, but it's so funny because I'm laughing at it now. I never said that I worked. I always said I was a stay-at-home mom, and yet I worked minimum 1 day a week. Most of the time I worked 2, 3, 4 days a week out of the house, let alone how much I had to do when I was home. And when was I doing it? I was doing it in the middle of the night. I was doing it after the kids went to bed, before they got up in the morning, when they were down for their naps, while we were at the playground. I mean, technology allowed you to do it everywhere. I could send messages while we were, hanging from the monkey bars with my kids, because I was also involved with the kids. It was crazy. It was just crazy. And yet the entire time I'm like, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't do anything. I never gave myself credit for what I was actually doing. And that's a lot of what happens. And it wasn't until, working through my own casting off of society and stepping into my own power that I started going, wait a minute, I have been doing a career. I have been doing this. I've been doing a lot. I never even realized that about myself and give myself credit for that. And then once I started giving myself credit for that, I started realizing, hey, I got a lot to offer. And I started reinventing who I was, and I started really stepping into the value of who I am. And that's actually where I moved my business. I shifted from being focused on being a healer, being in the Reiki era, which I still do a lot of Reiki. I still do Akashic Records because it's incredibly valuable. Absolutely. Book an appointment. Love to see you. Anyhow, but I started moving into more of coaching and helping people really align their lives with their souls, because that's what I was doing. As I aligned myself with and realized and gave credit to myself and started shifting my operation of my business and my life into being more balanced with who I actually was as a soul and bringing that out. And I'm still in that process. I am still learning that and working into it. And I share my journey with others and help them step into their power. Okay. I'm not the expert on it, but I'm really good at reading energy. And so I read energy and help people find it within themselves. And that part I'm good at. But anyhow, this wasn't supposed to be a sales ad. This was talking about how amazing women are in their 40s and their 50s. Break into it. And now I want to talk about menopause. I want to take a couple minutes and talk about menopause. So menopause, I swear, I think the doctors have been diagnosing everything that is wrong with me. Everything I've gone to them saying I've been getting, whether I was getting headaches, whether I was getting aches. I was having a really hard time with my hips, and my hip pain and everything. Turned out that during pregnancy, my hips had twisted and it was causing a lot of back pain. That was part of my problem. But no, that was not what any of the stuff was chalked up to. The upset stomachs, the breathing, the weight gain, anything like that was never never addressed and really found out what was going on with me. The answer was always, oh, well, you're just starting menopause. From about the age of 35, they've been telling me that, I'm just premenopausal. So apparently I've been premenopausal for 15 years. I call bullshit. Okay? Bullshit. Everything to do with a woman's health is not the result of her vagina. Sorry to break the news to you medical experts out there, but it's not. Okay? We are more complicated than that. We have a whole system of organs and brain cells and emotions and things that are going on. Okay? It's not all about that. I know it might be for some of you out there, a little more caveman. The lower vibrations of men may be that way, but that's what the medical was based on. And that's what they kept telling me, is that, I'm just premenopausal. I wasn't premenopausal. What I was doing is going through an identity crisis. I was having health issues. And then when I finally found the right people to help me heal and go through the processes of healing, and I started healing physically, emotionally, mentally, and I started finding my soul and learning how to live through my soul, my health got better, and that's where I started really stepping into who I was. And I felt so much better, right? I'll tell you honestly, 40 was awful. When I brought in 40, I was taking 2 Tylenol, extra strength, every 4 hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I would wake up. As soon as it wore off during the night, I would wake up from pain and I would take 2 more. On top of that, I was taking 2 Advil, extra strength, every 6 hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes, that is right. They were overlapping. I was on both of them all the time. I would I would go to bed with not having the intention. I didn't set any alarms or anything else, but I would wake up during the night and I'd be in so much pain I couldn't get back to sleep. So I would get up and take more. And that's what I was doing every day. Now, from an outside perspective, I looked like I was having fun. I was on my game. I had my healing practice going on. I was doing good at it. I had my community group that I was running. That was going really well. My kids were active and good. I was out active. I was hiking with my friends. I was mountain biking at the time. My 40th, I had a big party at my house. Like, I was really, from an outside perspective, I was doing really good in life. Inside, I was drugged out on painkillers. I hurt every day. When I wake up in the morning, it was a toss up what hurt more, to continue lying there or to actually get up. And I would walk from my bed to the bathroom. The amount of pain that went up the back of my legs, through my heels and my lower back and everything, was excruciating, and through my hips, and it was excruciating. I would cry. I'd have tears and wincing as I walked. And heaven forbid, one of my babies, one of my children, needed immediate attention. They were crying, woke up from a nightmare, and I would bolt down to them. That run down that hall, I can still remember how painful that was, because my body was so out of alignment. And it was in so much physical pain. And when you have physical pain, there's emotional pain, there's mental pain, there's spiritual pain. And I had to clean up all of that in order to feel better. And I'll tell you, today I brought in 50. I do not take anything. I rarely ever have a headache. Sorry. I rarely have a headache. And I rarely take anything for that headache if I do. I don't have any cramps and period issues or anything like that. I have not really had much in the way of menopausal issues with hot flashes and things like that. I've noticed changes in my diet. I've noticed my eating has lessened, and changes. I've noticed changes. I can definitely tell you I am in that phase of life. But I'm not really having any issues with it. I've had days where I get a little bit of hot, but not really. I have a theory on hot flashes too. Back to that in a second. But I break out at 50 way better than I did 40. I feel so much better at 50 than I did 40. And I invite you, ladies, embrace yourself. Cast off the society and embrace your soul design, and bring in your 50s like on fire. Now, speaking of on fire, I'm going to go back to this menopause. So I was at a drum group a few weeks back, and one of the ladies shared about her menopausal issues, and she was actually mourning her this change in life. And so we ended up actually in a conversation. It was all women that night. And we ended up in this whole conversation and we were various different ages. You know, some women there were quite younger and they weren't anywhere near that. And other women had long been through it already. And so there was quite a range of us. And it was interesting to see everybody's perspective. There was a lot that was mourning this transition in life, this youthfulness that was being passed and everything else. And I'm like, I don't feel that way. I feel more empowered. I feel more authentic. I feel fabulous, right? And they were talking about the hot flashes. So anyhow, we ended up with the hot flashes. And what we've determined, and I thought about this afterwards, and I thought this really has a lot of truth to it. So when you have a hot flash, what's actually happening is it's the physical, because everything's connected, right? Our spiritual, emotional, mental, everything, it's all connected, physical. The physical heat flash that's burning up, what you are burning up is the shackles of society. All those burdens that have been suppressing you, conforming you, telling you you're not good enough, telling you you're not worthy enough, telling you that you're a second-class citizen, telling you whatever it is that society has been forcing on you that is not in alignment with you. That is what your body is burning off with those hot flashes. And so it's like, burn, baby, burn. Like, let those shackles go. So every time if you are going through menopause and you have those hot flashes, that's the mantra. Burn, baby, burn. Let those shackles go, right? The phoenix going up in smoke. That's the era of your life that you're in. You're the phoenix going up, burning up in smoke, getting rid of all those shackles of society. And what a true thing. And I mean, this is not scientific. I'm not going to say this is scientific, but this is what came to me about it, is that the more work you put in at a younger age in getting in tune with yourself and being balanced and expressing your soul energy into your physical life and living your human life aligned to your authentic soul design and what your intention for this life was, the more aligned you are that way, the less burning up that you're going to have to do. I really think there's a correlation to that. So I invite you to get rid of those shackles and make that menopausal fire a little less wild, right? A little less hot. But that's, and if you are experiencing the menopausal hot flashes, just think of them. Burn, baby, burn. Let those shackles go. Be free. Rise up like the phoenix that you are. Step into the beauty of who you are, the power of who you are, the wisdom, the incredible. You have so much to offer this world. So much this world needs to hear from you, because your experience as a woman is so unusual and unique, and it's unlike anybody else's. Okay, and it needs to embrace it. And for any men that listen to this, I really hope you actually listen to this with the intent of learning and holding space. And as if you in holding space, not to really and women, don't expect your men to understand, and men, we don't expect you to understand us. We don't ask you to understand us. That's part of our charm, is our mystery, right? But hold space, safe space. We don't want you to don't go to your partners, your wives, or whatever, and go, "Oh, I understand. I know exactly what you're feeling." No, you don't. No, you don't. You never will. I'm sorry. Intellectually, I can understand you, and I hold space for you, and I honor you, and I worship you, and I love you, and I think you're amazing. That's all we want to hear from you. I love you. I think you're amazing. What can I do for you? That's all we want to hear from you. And you say that to a woman, and oh my God, she just blooms up. And boy, women, when they're in their power and they are receiving love, they shower love out. Okay? They just shower it out naturally. That's how they do it. But what happens, and this is another one, this video is getting longer than I intended, but anyhow, another aspect that happens with women is that they do so much, especially in their younger years and everything, they spend so much time giving and giving and giving, and at the same time standing in their masculine power. And the way our society structures have broken down, which have all been for good, there's been a lot of good. The dark side of that, though, is hasn't been safe. There isn't really a safe spot for motherhood. There's not a safe spot for femininity. We've had to make that safety ourselves. So we've had to be really strong in our own masculine energy, which has definitely served a purpose to our society's soul growth process, but it's been hard. It's been really hard. And so where was I going with that? I had a point with that. Oh, I can't remember now. Okay, come on. Receiving, that's what it is. That was what I wanted to talk about. Because we have been standing so strong in our masculine energy and having to hold so much at the same time of being nurturing and being like this whole world, the chaos that is women's lives, the diversity and everything that goes on through them, and the contrast between the way our society is designed, which is on a male cycle, versus being honoring the female cycle. And we've had to conform this female cycle to fit into the male and suck it up, and right? All of that has shut down in self-preservation. We've shut down, a lot of us, the ability to receive. And so this is where men pay attention, women pay attention. If you're struggling at all in your relationship, this could be a big one for it, okay? Women end up shutting down, and they no longer receive the love. Their men, they are incredible beings of love. They pour love. A healthy man will pour love into his woman, like just absolutely floods into them. It's a natural state for them. When they're in love, it just flows out of them like crazy. That's the whole thing about them. But when women shut down and they stop receiving that, men feel rejected. And their love has been rejected. Now, if this has been a play going on in your relationship, give him some credit that he's still there. Because he's living with his love rejected. Because you haven't been receiving it. So just as lonely and unloved as you might feel, that's how rejected he feels. And unloved that he feels. So, because you always mirror each other in relationships. And I'm talking about healthy relationships. I'm not talking about dysfunctional, abusive ones, obviously. Anyhow, stop trying to change him. Stop trying to explain this to him. And again, men, you don't have to understand this. Women, just start receiving. Let that love in. Just sit down and open up your heart and acknowledge the love that has been poured to you and receive it. That love comes to you from your husband, the father of your children, your children, your parents, your friends. Makes me teary. Isn't that funny? And I think it's because I feel so much of the pain that women have been put through because they stopped receiving it. Receive the love. So many people are trying to give you love. And because the road has been so hard, you stopped receiving. So it's time. It is time to step back and receive that love. Just take a big deep breath and feel it come into your body. Feel it soak into your body because it's all around you in your energy field, but you've got this barrier that is stopping you from receiving it. Let it in. And this is so emotional because I feel it so deeply for women. I see it everywhere I turn, and so many women I've been helping with this. Open up and receive. Realize how loved you really are. Okay, this is part of our societal twist because our society doesn't acknowledge how much women are really loved. They idolize us on pedestals, make us sexual objects, and they discredit us. That's the corruption. Real men don't feel that way. Only an injured man feels that way. Real men, and let me tell you, ladies, there is a lot of them out there. Majority of them are good men, and they want to love you. Your children, they want to love you. So let that love in. Okay? Let that love in. And let it flood through your system and feel it. And you will be amazed at how much this can transform your entire relationships. Because think about this. If you have been in love with somebody and you are doing things for them all the time and you're to show them how much you love them, you get up every single day and you do something because you love them, because the life you have with them, because of who they are, you love them, you admire them. And every single time that love is thrown back in your face, it's rejected. It's no. You say I'm beautiful? No, I'm not. You're crazy. You love me? You can't possibly love me because I don't love myself. These are all things women say, right? Oh, I'm too fat. Don't look at me. How can you possibly want to make love to me? I'm too fat. I'm too ugly. My hair's not good. I'm not dressed right. I don't have my makeup on. Don't look. Right? Right? That's rejection. That's rejecting the love that's coming to you. Let them love you. Let people love you. Your parents, you know how much... This is one of the things that shocked me the most in my life, I can say. It's one of the hardest things for me to come to understand. And I still struggle with it, obviously.
When I became a mother and the depth of love that I felt, or still feel, for my children, but particularly the moment I became a mother and I realized how deeply I loved this other human, there came a realization that someone felt that way about me. Talk about speaking from the heart, right? This is what happens when you speak from the heart. We get a little messy. Anyhow, that moment, that was an incredible changing moment to realize that somebody loved me as much as I loved this baby. This was mine. Okay? And for most of us, it's pretty rare actually, whether, even if your mother gave you up for adoption, for most of us, even that was an act of love. However, no matter how shitty your parents were, okay, no matter what went on, there was an instinctual part of them that loves you. They could have totally messed it up because they have their own shadows and demons and things that they're working out. They could be total screw ups, but they probably loved you. They might not show it right. They may have done everything wrong. They probably gave you a lifetime of issues to go through therapy with. But the fact is, that moment you were born, you were surrounded by love. That is the majority of us in this world. No matter what has played out since that moment, you were loved. At the core of it all, you were loved by your parents. Okay, and this is one of the beauties of society that has grown, where we're now allowing men to be more involved in the birthing process, because that moment when the babies come into this world and men are there to witness it, it transforms them too, because they love you, right? Your dad loves you, and even if he wasn't able to be there in the moment that you were born, there's a part of him that knew about it, and he still loves you. There's a love there that is a natural parent to child, so you are loved. Absolutely. Okay? Like I said, they may have fucked everything up since then, but you were loved. We come from love. Right? It's actually, there's a little bit of science behind that, and this is sort of coming out of my memories and downloading here. They're highlighting it to me, that there has actually been scientific proof that babies who are not loved don't thrive. So the very fact that you survived from the moment of your first breath means that you were loved. Believe it or not, it's true. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed this. And really, I'd love to hear what your thoughts were. This was not a thought out video. I don't do thought out videos because I'm not designed that way. I have a tendency to just speak as it comes to me. And this particular message has been sitting with me for a while. I've been wanting to put it out there, but I've actually been trying to organize it, and I don't do that very well. The best that I can do is I kind of did a brief highlight. So let me just see. I think I covered it. The queen. That was it. That was the other word I was looking for, is queen. Be a queen, right? Queens. They stand with equal. They are amazing. We really are. Women are amazing. And honor yourself for where you are in your journey. Step into your power. Please like my video, share my video, give me a comment. Tell me what you think. What has been your experience along your journey as a woman? Okay. And if for any guys that are still listening to this, kudos to you, man. I love you. I love men. I think they're amazing. And I don't try and understand them a whole lot because I'm not having the male experience. So I honor them for who they are. And I've been blessed in my life to know a lot of very, very good men. And I honestly could say that the majority of this world is made up of very good men, just like women. Okay. So women, I hope you can see that and appreciate that in them too. And men, thank you if you have been listening. And I really honor you for that. And my advice to you is that maybe you got a little insight from this video. And it's not that you can intellectually have an understanding and have an understanding of how to create a little bit of space and maybe an understanding of how that rejection you might be feeling, that you've poured love and you get rejected by women, is not actually a fault of yours necessarily. It's that she's having trouble receiving it. So recognizing that sometimes can help her receive it too. I don't want to go too much into that because that's a whole other thing. Anyhow, thank you for listening. If you still are, kudos to you, and share this wherever you can. So I'm going to wrap up. Again, I'm Jennifer Quick. I'm with Soul Clarity Coaching. I do Akashic record readings and Reiki and energy healing and business readings and relationship readings. And here's the bottom line. I read energy. You have the story. You know the life. I help you. I read the energy of what's going on and I help you rewrite your story so that you live the dream life that you want to be living. From Soul. Love you all. Mwah.